Welcome to the consumerization of mental health. This is part of our Future of Mental and Behavioral Health series. This is a breakout session, so it's 90 minutes, and then we open it up to our audience halfway through in order for them to participate in the conversation. I'm Bambi Francisco Roizen. I'm one of your co-hosts. Well, many of us know that a big contributor to our mental health and resilience is gratitude. So let me begin by giving thanks to our sponsors. To our longstanding partners, Advisor, which is a boutique M&A advisory firm, Scrubbed, which is an outsourced bookkeeping firm, and StratPoint, which is an outsourced engineering firm. If you want quality, affordable bookkeeping engineering, use Scrubbed and StratPoint. They're excellent. I'd highly recommend them. And to our healthcare partners, thank you as well, UCSF Health Hub, as well as BetterHelp, which is a provider of virtual therapy sessions, the leading provider of virtual therapy sessions, Octave Health, which is a provider of in-person and virtual therapy sessions, and NeuroFlow, which is a collaborative care software platform. So today we are talking about the consumerization of mental health, so making consumers more aware of the economics around healthcare, which hopefully then empowers them to make better choices. But before we do that, let me provide some context around the state of mental health and sort of a macro view of mental health trends. Now, Archana and I have been hosting the Future of Mental and Behavioral Health since 2018. So we've been studying this industry for quite a while. And there's several things that have happened in the last several years. And let me go through them briefly. So number one, there's new negative factors contributing to the rise of mental health and anxiety. Two, we have a better sense of the challenges that lay before us. And three, COVID, however disruptive, there's a silver lining there. So number one, let me go about new factors contributing to our mental stress. Sure, COVID was disruptive, but we're post-pandemic. There's something, however, that's possibly more dangerous and lingering, and that is we're living in these culture wars. So I like to say that half the country feels the painting of the country they know is fading into the past. And the other half of the country feels that the painting that they know was always a fraud and is not fading fast enough. And my friend Peter Thiel sort of puts the polarity this way: half the country sees race on a spectrum. I'm a product of various ethnicities, and gender is binary, whereas the other half feels that race is binary and gender is on a spectrum. So these epistemological wars we're having is really enough to drive anyone crazy. And it's certainly this underlying source of anxiety. So good to keep in mind. So number two, we have a better sense of the challenge that lays before us. And what I mean is that we're aware now and increasingly aware that the scientific and healthcare industrial complex has been oriented for far too long, has been oriented around identifying a clinical diagnostic before getting paid. And this is not a slight on the industry at all. It's just an outgrowth of how the healthcare ecosystem was established. But the unfortunate consequence of that is that we have this ever expanding lexicon of sickness. And the challenge there is that we're constantly focused on identifying sickness, and we're not spending enough time where we should be, which is preventative, which is more recurring thinking about our health. And I think that's a good trend that everybody is starting to see. The silver lining, well, COVID was a tragedy, but it was a forcing function in a great way because it brought future telehealth adoption into the present. It made providers, it made patients and consumers far more welcoming and comfortable with telehealth, but also just, many alternative ways of treating their healthcare. So that is kind of the high level what's happening with mental health and health in general. And even though this panel is part of our mental health series, hi Archana, it's really about the consumerization of healthcare, and are we empowering consumers by giving them this transparency? Are we empowering them in a way to be more proactive, and therefore reducing their conditions, serious conditions down the road, and ultimately by also, lowering costs, which is a goal. So with that, we are going to kick off the panel, and I am going to hand the baton over to my partner, Archana.
Hey everyone, welcome. Good to see you again. Sorry, I was running behind, literally doing patient care. So bear with balancing act here. So yeah, we wanted to kick off this meeting, this panel, in the same way we always do, because you can introduce yourself better than we can. And so we would love to kind of hear from each one of you, about your company. What are you trying to solve, especially very consumer focused? If you can go around this panel. I'm seeing Shawn as my first, right? Shawn, welcome. Can you share your background, your company, and then how are you empowering the consumers to make good decisions?
Sure, absolutely, and thrilled to be here. So I'm here as part of a company called Bind. So Bind is a health insurance plan. We have launched a new category of health insurance, which we call personalized health insurance, or a personalized health plan. And with that, you should know we are entirely focused on the individual. And we believe that individuals' needs vary and their insurance should as well. And from a personalization perspective, your answers to questions you have should be answered to you personally, to your context, and your coverage should be allowed to be personalized and customized to your needs as well. So we have created a personalized health plan, and I look forward to sharing more about that.
Excellent, thank you. And Bind has been, Shawn, Bind has been before on our panel, and it's been quite interesting, and the whole trajectory that we have seen. I am seeing Allon on my next screen here. Allon, welcome again.
Thank you. Or which Allon?
Yeah,
Oh yeah. Archana, I think we're gonna have to start saying Alon with her last name.
Oh, which Allon? Yes, that's true. Allon, how's that?
Okay, I'll start. Hi, everyone. My name is Allon, one of the Allons, the one with just one L. I'm the founder of BetterHelp. BetterHelp is, like Bambi mentioned, is a online therapy provider. We're the largest therapy provider in the US and in the world. We work mainly direct to consumer. We've provided over 1 million people help with 30,000 licensed therapists that have been using our network. And we're part of Teladoc Health.
Great. And what is your mental health hack, Allon, with 1L? And I'm going to ask that to you too, Shawn, because that's one of the things that we kicked off with in the other.
Oh, yes,
we forgot that one.
We forgot about the mental health hack. Yes. So Shawn, you will be on the hook in a bit. So on okay. M, can you share that?
I think it keeps changing from time to time. It's usually like finding an obscure hobby and getting all into that. Recently, for me, it's chess, or online chess specifically, and I literally noticed how it affects my mental health or state of mind, if you will. So, but in a month, it's probably going to be a different hack.
Excellent, thank you. And we will need to know what you're doing next month for your mental and physical well-being in a way. So Andy, you're next on my screen. Welcome.
Great. So my name is Andy Kurtzig, and I'm the founder and CEO of JustAnswer.com. And we connect consumers with experts, doctors, lawyers, mechanics, accountants, tech support, and of course, mental health experts. And so we're sort of a horizontal play in this space with exposure to the healthcare category and the mental health care category as one of 700 different categories that we play in. I started the company 18 years ago when my wife, Sarah, was pregnant with our first daughter, and she had lots of questions being pregnant for the first time, and she called her doctor, and her doctor didn't have time for her. So I had just sold my second company, and I thought, hey, I'll build a website where Sarah can talk to a doctor anytime she wants. And that's how it all got started.
I have a question around your mental health hack, but I also have a question or several questions around that. So they're coming later. Yes, what's your hack?
So I think the mental health or the mental health hack is to try to solve the entire problem. So in that example of a pregnancy or or getting a divorce or getting married or any of these things is often a collection of different problems that you're trying to solve all at once. And that's our mental health hack, especially having a baby, right? There's mental health issues, there's of course physical health issues. You got to think about a will, and you're getting your house child-proofed and a car seat for your car and all that. And so we're able to solve all those.
Yes, so you're solving for other people's mental health hack, but how do you do your own?
At the moment, I'm on vacation. So
There you go.
taking a vacation every once in a while, especially after this crazy year we've all lived through.
Yes, yes. Where are you at this time? Because your background is different.
Yep, I'm on the East Coast in Maine.
Oh, okay, nice. All right, so on to our next Allon block. Can you share something about yourself and your company, and then introduce it, and then share your personal mental health hack?
Alon Bloch. I am co-founder and CEO of K-Health. K-Health is a data-driven primary care offering that is remote. Yeah, you can use an app. We have a free app that people can check in their symptoms, and if they want to, they can also connect to a doctor across a broad range of primary care issues, chronic, acute, and more mental health. We started around really my own personal desire to provide myself and my loved ones with direct access to medical information that's not scary and annoying or just plain wrong. So instead of going to Dr. Google and checking out your symptoms, or talking to a doctor who speaks to you in multi-syllable words in Latin, we wanted to be able to provide ourselves with access to information, because if people can be super sophisticated about their finance, travel, real estate, e-commerce, everything but their health, we felt like we should demystify health. And we bet essentially that by getting the right kind of data, we could train a machine to understand the language of medicine in a true sense and be able to learn you over time and to engage with you. We have a free app, and we have a medical services layer that people can use remotely 24/7 in 48 continental states. We're venture backed. We raised, I think, about 400 million. We have a partnership with a joint venture, actually, more than just a regular partnership with Anthem Blue Cross. And we also work with Mayo, and we have a data partnership with Mayo Clinic. Yeah, it's kind of all go. It's very fast growing, and just a lot of things going on. To me, on the mental hacks, I've got many. I think to me, the biggest thing is freeing up time to think and just do stuff that isn't working. My best work is done not being in the office in meetings. And that kind of completely positions me differently. So it's really two things. Just not having meetings is a big free up time for me to be productive, and also de-stresses me. And then the other thing is meditation. I learned it by chance. I never thought I would get into it. I don't do it every day, but it does help declutter my brain. It's the best 20 minutes I can use. Sometimes I don't have 20 minutes, so it will stress me to meditate, but often, we can find it. And then the third thing, which I don't always get around to do, is just exercise. Any form of exercise, whether it's simple walking or just running, or any kind of exercise I can do. I do a few different things. It just magically puts me in a different place. So I think part of what we need to do is get out of our busy lives and complex world and just do something else with our mind.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Off to you, Bambi. I think
I didn't ask Shawn what his mental health hack is.
Oh yeah, Shawn, what is your mental health hack? You got enough time to think about it.
Well, I didn't have to think very much. So the first one I credit to my lovely wife, Shauna. Yes, we do have the same name, minus I don't have an A. And she has a phrase that is very, helps clarify things and put things in perspective, which is, last time I checked, you were not the president. So I have that in my mind all the time. And then the other one is actually linked to that as well, which is, there was a president, W, that sent me to a faraway place, to a combat zone, which taught me a lot about perspective as well. So those are my 2 hacks, and they really come back to perspective.
That's great.
That's really novel, and for the first time I've heard that. That's nice.
Yeah. Reorienting the way we think. I'll quickly say what mine is, and I do this pretty consistently. I wake up in the morning, I turn on worship music, and I take out my yoga mats, and I sit there, and you could say it's meditation, you could say it's prayer, and it's a little bit of exercise, mild exercise. So I get it done, and it's about 20 minutes, and it's a great way to start the day, kind of move things around, but also have a new perspective as well. So Archana, do you want to share yours? Then I'll
Yes.
first question.
Yes, absolutely. I would, it's been very consistent. So I go to Stanford Dish every morning, and that's kind of my mental and physical hack. It's challenging, it's rewarding, it changes, shows me every season, year round, rain or shine, my partner in crime in a way. So that's my creative zone, all of the above. Every morning, 6 a.m. So.
Well, I think, why did we even ask this question? And partly, I think we like to ask this question because, particularly for this panel, because it shows that we're all sort of proactive about our mental health. And we know that we have to take care of ourselves physically as well as mentally. And so I'm glad to hear that the first thing, for your mental health hack was to go call your doctor. Although sometimes I do call Archana. But she's not my doctor, although she is a primary care physician. So let's move on, and let's take a deeper dive into why you four really chose to focus a lot on the consumer. Specifically, the 2 Allons, you're focusing on healthcare. And then with Andy, you've decided on a direct-to-consumer model. Actually, even with Shawn, with Bind, it is direct-to-consumer. It's very consumer-oriented. So I want to find, for the audience, why did you decide to have this direct-to-consumer route versus, at least with the 2 Allons, you could have gone through employers, right? They're increasingly open to covering more services, including mental health. So that's probably something for everyone to answer. So maybe let's start from the bottom up, and we'll start with Allon B.
So first of all, we do have a big enterprise-focused partnership called Hydrogen Health. It's just young and just starting out. But certainly, I don't really differentiate between employer, government, and consumer in terms of the underlying consumer need. In the middle, you have various intermediaries. You've got a very different go-to-market and business model. And boy, do they love to complicate matters in the employer market. But I think from our perspective, our psyche, our DNA was to give users, consumers, direct access to information and control and empowerment around the process of dealing with their health and healthcare, which is something I'm a big supporter of. So this was just a natural byproduct of our product, and building a product that was free to use for consumers. And if they wanted to, they could talk to a doctor through our platform, but they don't have to. So that was a very natural way. The other thing is just more simply, we just wanted to learn. When you launch a product, there's always a gut-wrenching kind of stage of, okay, what are you going to focus on? Because you can't do everything. And what's an MVP, and what do you include and not include? And what's a good enough product that people can use and trust and believe in? And so we started with acute, that kind of first diagnostic visit, the ability to help people there, and then expanded it into chronic conditions and mental health. But we just felt it would just be easier for us to access that market and reach users. And the third reason is just prosaic, but a third of our users are uninsured. About a third uninsured, a third high deductible, and a third just people using it for convenience, even if they have insurance. And we wanted to enable people who didn't have any other options to get high quality medicine. And so, all these reasons combined. But that said, I fundamentally, I think everybody, whether rich or poor, have a chronic condition or acute condition, face really a similar set of kind of medical concerns. They, of course, change based on medical intent, but it doesn't matter who's paying the bill. People still have the same fundamental intent, need, and concerns, whether it's prevention, it's chronic, it's acute, it's, curiosity, all these different things.
And then what percentage of your population that you see do request for a mental health assessment, even though, you're squarely focused in primary care, but since we are focused on mental health, behavioral health here?
So look, from our perspective, should be part of primary care. It's separate, just like genetics is separate from primary care for no good reason, just because a lot of the rules were set in the 50s or the 40s or the 30s when, mental health was not considered medicine. It is clearly medicine. It's just done differently in different rules and different settings. So from our perspective, it needs to be integrated. And I think you mentioned the primary care physicians are the biggest prescribers of depression and anxiety medication, more so than any other clinical role in America. So they're already, it's part and parcel of what we're doing. I think a big chunk of our audience would use therapy if we had to offer it right now. And we have a very, fast-growing depression and anxiety program. And we plan to expand in all of it. To me, it's kind of no-brainer. It's just, again, from a small company perspective, we want to focus on the sequencing and do it really well and make sure we're comfortable to scale it before we kind of roll it out.
Well, let's go, just for audience sake, who really are trying to think, maybe for entrepreneurs out there trying to understand which direction they should go, direct to consumer or another route. I'd love to hear from Alon and Andy, and start with the two of you, why you chose this route. Andy, maybe you.
Sure. So, I started the company 18 years ago, and I think the enterprise just wasn't ready back then. So we got started on the consumer side, and our mission has always been 3 words: we help people. And so we're just very focused on the consumer and trying to understand what the consumer need is and trying to serve that need. And our underlying philosophy is that if we can really nail that we can do that in a number of different channels, including through enterprise and through insurance and other ways, but really focused on connecting the consumer with an expert, in this case, a mental health expert, as well and as efficiently, as fast as possible. And over time, we start finding more and more places to put that CPU that we built, including through other channels like enterprise and insurance. And we're starting to do some of that now as well.
It's similar to Archana's question to Alon. And what percentage? I know you do a pretty big chunk of the business that you do is healthcare. And what is that? And then what is mental health?
Yep. So we don't break out the categories like that, but we've got 700 different categories, and we actually break it out even more fine-grained than that. So within the healthcare sector, we've got mental health, but then we've also got oncologists and pediatricians, and we slice it a bunch of different ways.
Okay.
So Andy, well, quick curious question is around licensure and other things. So since you have such a wide variety of offering, how do you navigate the state licensures and the restrictions that you have around practice? Yeah. And then if you are able to navigate, how did you build that network?
Yeah, good question. So we do something a bit different than probably most of the others on this video call, which is we don't establish a patient-client relationship. So we're horizontal. We're in lots of different categories, but we don't go as deep as some of the other players on this call. And so we can do quick answers to quick questions and that kind of thing. But when it gets too serious, we refer them off to somebody else.
Do you have a care navigation tool that you refer them out to someone else, or you would just say, go back to your PCP?
No, in this case, the mental health expert would refer them out to the most appropriate source, and it's up to them to make that choice, who they want to send them to, or who they think is a good either network or specific.
So it's more knowledge-based discussion, and it's not so much action-based. So no prescriptions or no kind of care that happens during that time.
That's right.
Okay.
That's right. It can be action-based, and there can be some care involved, but but there's no prescriptions, and there's no, the deeper stuff doesn't happen on our site.
Okay. Thank you.
Sure.
So let's
because of that, we're able to do it a bit cheaper and in other ways than you might be able to do it some otherwise.
Awesome.
Well, let's move to Alon then from BetterHelp. And I know you have some enterprise customers as well, but you are the largest provider of virtual therapy sessions from a direct to consumer standpoint. And so that's worked in your favor, but you didn't know that when you started. So what was your thought process when you were starting out your company?
Yeah, I can give a lot of great reasons, but honestly, it's mostly the founder's DNA and where they're coming from. Kind of echoing what Alon from K-Health said. I'm a consumer guy. This is my fourth startup. All of them have been in the consumer space. As a product person, I find consumer to be much more fun than enterprise solutions. It's faster, you can iterate more, and you're really dependent on your product quality, because when you charge consumers, in our case, $200, $300 a month, you have to have excellent product and excellent service for these people to give you the credit card and then stay subscribed and pay you again and again. If they don't get the best service that they can get, they just churn and you die. Whereas in enterprise, yes, product is important, service is important, but also, or even more so, your marketing and your sales, in who you know, in how you position the product, and who you partner with, et cetera, et cetera. And to me, it's just more fun. Put aside, where the business is more lucrative, though I think consumer has the much bigger potential regardless, but it's just the being dependent just on the quality of your product, the quality of your service is very intriguing and appealing compared to enterprise type of sales. And I completely appreciate, people, I have a lot of friends who want to go just enterprise, and the whole consumer thing doesn't resonate to them at all. I think it's just different people with different mindsets.
So Shawn, I mean, when you think of it in insurance company, you think it's full on enterprise, right? I mean, you're dealing with the providers but you're so consumer focused in the way that the other three panelists are. How is it different from being another insurance provider? How is the consumer focus changing the way you engage with providers?
Sure. So I think that we had an opportunity that very few get in the insurance world, which is start with a blank whiteboard and come up with a new insurance solution. And when we say an insurance solution, it's the actual insurance product itself, not I'm going to make the tech stack better, I'm going to throw a better navigation service on something. It's actually redesigning a financial instrument. And when you think about doing that, I think the most successful financial instruments are aligned to the needs of individual people. And if you build a good financial product for people, then you win over time. And we happen to have the belief that when you're running a health insurance plan and you're taking risk on decisions people make and their health, et cetera, over time, being aligned with them is quite important. And our belief is that the best steward of someone's health is the individual themselves. No one's going to force them to do anything. At the end of the day, they have to want to do something. So we very much believe in it is all about the individual and the person, and we should build products to meet the needs of individual people, not enterprises of people. So that fundamentally, I would say, is the difference. Is most insurance companies are focused on the risk of a group and building products to manage it at the group or the enterprise level, as the word we've been using a lot. We come at it from how do we design an insurance product that can actually morph and change as people's needs change as they go through life and experience life, some things unexpectedly, some things planfully. How do we allow insurance to flex with that? So very much everything we did from the start was, how do I create an insurance product that is connected and aligned 100% with individual people and individual needs?
So does this mean that, especially because you're consumer focused, that all of the other panelists, patients are somewhat can get coverage from you? Is that a direct to consumer solution?
Sure. So we started out in the enterprise market, because when you're creating a new insurance product, so insurance is highly regulated. It's like purveying medical care is highly regulated. And the insurance markets, when it comes to offering direct consumer products, is highly regulated. In the enterprise market, there's a regulation called ERISA, where there is, I'll say, a little more flexibility on the creation and invention side when it comes to insurance products. So that was a deliberate choice by us, is don't want to run, on the rocks of regulatory burden when you're trying to come up with something creative, because the challenge with regulations is they were built based on the experience to date, not thinking about what might happen in 50 years. And when you're building a 50-year product that no one's thought of and created before, regulation doesn't account for it.
Yeah.
And regulators interpret things in a black and white manner typically. And there is no black and white regulation about the personalized health plan we've created. But we will certainly get to individuals, and we do get to individuals. Even though we sell to an enterprise, every enterprise has an open enrollment period where people decide at an individual level which plan they want to enroll in. So we still have to win at the consumer level as well, or we don't have any membership.
So how are you different uniquely from the current offerings, especially in the enterprise space where, most of the health plans are quite similar? So what I understand is like you're focused on transparency. Can you explain your model a little bit more, how that transparency come about for the consumers, and then also especially focused on the mental health issues, like how the coverage of that unfolds for your members?
Yeah, absolutely. So when we were at the whiteboard saying, okay, how would we design an insurance product that really is just better for the average American? That's really been our mission and our focus. How do we design just a better insurance product? And you start by looking, okay, what's insurance product today? What features do they have? Or what features should we keep? Which features should we think about discarding? And very quickly you get to things, especially when it comes to mental health, that you discard. So one of those things we think doesn't really make sense is, why would we erect a barrier to care that we know is beneficial to someone? Why would we throw a deductible in their way? If someone needs something and needs care, we should not throw a barrier in the way. So let's throw away deductibles. So we did that. Then we said, okay, we've thrown the barrier away. Now what can we do to help them? Now it comes to, okay, what should I access from a treatment perspective, and where should I go? Well, in order to get answers on what I might consider and where should I go for that, once I decide what treatment I want, you have to give people very clear options. Those options are best when they're with certainty. When you enter into a health insurance product with a co-insurance layer, you can never give someone certainty before they make a consumption decision, because co-insurance is applied after the fact. After I receive a service, it gets billed, then I apply math to it and tell you what you owe. So you're never able to give someone a clear answer on options. So we threw co-insurance away. And what that allows you to do then is what Google has conditioned the world, which is I should be able to pick up my phone, enter into a search box, and get options and answers. That's what people expect. Health insurance should be no different. It just so happens that we've allowed that to happen as well. So we've created a differential, which is when you build a product that's based on what people need and want, what they want is, I want to pick up my phone and search for answers just like I do with everything else. And we allow them to do that. So they can search, I've got anxiety, what are my options? We can show them, hey, we actually have the barrier to receive mental health care virtually is actually zero cost to you. You can go see a therapist if you want for $30. You can go to, you can go to the emergency department if you want for $400, but those are clear answers. You've got options just like you're used to, and you can make a decision that's best for you. So I know it probably sounds simple, but it is actually quite differentiated when you think about the products you have and you use today. You don't get clear answers from the products you use today.
How is the adoption, especially in the enterprise state, when people are offering the ABCD health plans, where the TPAs are owning the market? How are you going to be penetrating that market with the enterprise folks?
Sure. So I think what you're getting at is when we're up next to somebody else, how many do we get and how many do they get?
Yes.
And, on the high end, we get 75% year one. On the low end, we get 5% and everywhere in between. And it really is a series of confounding factors. How are we priced? Do they allow us to communicate with people? Do they actually give some sort of reason why they put bind in as an option? So there are many factors, but it ranges from 5 to 75%.
Yeah.
And then, but what we do know is that in the year two growth rates, our same store, growth rate, year over year client base, we on average across the entire book of enterprise clients, we grow over 20% year on year, which means people like it. And our data suggests when we survey people, 86% of people answer that they would be disappointed if buying was no longer offered. So we're doing something right.
I just also want to point out that just listening to Shawn, I haven't met Shawn previously, but I'm a big fan of Bind. I think they're taking the right approach. And also the way he's describing it is just a general approach to healthcare, which I think all the panelists here are taking, which is if people need something related to health, whether it's prevention or a current problem they're having right now, make it easy for them to get what they need right now and then escalate it later, as opposed to make it really, really hard for them to get it. And in the process, erect many walls that just add costs. For me, just, the broader theme here is it's not one company doing just insurance and one company just doing information, now the third one just doing, providing therapy. We're collectively, I think all the companies here are breaking down the walls of something that was set up probably about 100 years ago. And in many respects hasn't changed that much. And yes, there's been many, many changes in medications and surgery. There's a lot of innovation in medicine, but in the care delivery itself, we've just made it really hard and in return made it really clunky, really difficult. It really hasn't changed in half a century. For most of our users, they need solutions that are completely different. You don't go to, when you need money, you don't stand in line in a retail bank, pay a teller a fee, have them count your money. Everybody would think that is ridiculous. And yet we do think that it's perfectly okay to wait days, weeks to be in front of any kind of clinician. Again, whether it's for mental health or any kind of acute need. From my perspective, why the hell not have a simple solution right now, 24/7, when I have a need right now? And so for me, it's when I was listening to Shawn, it's refreshing to hear a company that's taken this approach, because I think that this is a direction that things should go. And we're already allies. It's not really competitive. This market's so big. There's so much inertia here. We're all allies around this. So sorry to jump in, but I just wanted to point that out.
That's great. It's also because this market's so big, but it's also still has this old orientation. So it takes people like you and Shawn and Alon and Andy to start making people think differently about how they take care of themselves. And so And I think one of it, so I do see Shawn and what Bind's doing very similar to what you guys are doing, because it is very transparent. All of you have transparent pricing about what you're offering. And so I wanted to ask this to all of you, that certainty about what a person is paying. How has that changed the utilization of your service? How does that change their behavior around the way they take care of themselves? What kind of changes are you seeing? And this is for everybody, anybody who wants to jump in.
Yeah, for me, it feels a bit like Blockbuster Video with the late fees back in the days, and then Netflix came out and revolutionized that industry. You know, today, if you have a pre-existing condition, if you've got a problem, it's too late. You can't now go get a health plan and get covered. And I think most of us are allowing that consumer to get help now, even if they have a pre-existing condition. And so it's that kind of a scenario is a part of this.
And do you think so? So Allon, or Allon Bloch, our consumers, do you see them more being more preventative? Do they have that approach around their healthcare, because they're constantly looking up on your app to see what kind of diagnosing themselves, being a little bit more confident using K-Health than Google, say? But what's the behavior around your app?
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of a mind twist. We want to encourage appropriate usage because it makes sense, whether it costs us money or not. So there's certainly about 25% of our users use us regularly all the time just to Google their symptoms on our app, right? To understand different things. They're curious about different things. People have a lot of questions about health. There's a reason why, the New York Times has a weekly health and wellness section. People are interested. People have a ton of questions. Every one of us, I'm sure, can write down easily 5 questions that we're curious about. And then in 6 months, there'll be another 5, right? So, and as we age, there are different things. You're also interested about your family, your loved one, your core nuclear family, your aging parents, your young kids, your spouses. These are things that we care about. So they tell us something and we're curious about them. So I think there's a fair amount of stuff that we want to do. I think the biggest barrier is people say, well, I've got this rash. Let me just hope it goes away, just because that friction of being in front of a doctor is a big deal. And the same was, I'm feeling down. Let me just, oh, it's really tough. I now need to figure out how to do this. It's not only money, it's also time, it's effort, it's going places, it's the administration around, the admin around it, all that kind of stuff. So I think Shawn said it right. Make it really easy for people in 1 minute to know that you can help them. Now, they might need a lot of help and they might need a lot of different things, but just make it really easy for them to start getting answers. Even if it's 2 a.m., even in whatever setting they are. Nobody's feeling anxiety or depression right now, or has the worst headache in the world, or a weird ache and pain, or afraid they have COVID, and said, let me just go to sleep on it, and tomorrow morning I'll try and figure out and try and squeeze in to see a doctor. Just nobody feels that way. They want to resolve the things right now. So just make it happen. If we can trade cryptocurrencies 24/7, we're treating our money in a more sophisticated way than we're treating our health. So I think there's a ton of stuff. I think you'll see a lot of innovation in business models in healthcare, because a lot of them are tied to the old school approach of per member per month. They're not tied to utilization. They're not tied to what people need. And it wants to usually discourage utilization for various reasons.
So since you touched upon the per member per month or the business model, so to say, I wanted to quickly dive into, what is your business model? How are you getting more episodic events or care, or is that a subscriber based? And then what percentage is that shifting? Do you actually proactively transition your folks into subscriber, and how much do they catch it? So I will start with Allon M, and then we can kind of go along that way. So Allon.
Sure. So our model is super simple. Members pay typically with their credit card. They pay us a monthly fee. With this fee, they can, of course, we match them with a licensed therapist will be their therapist until they decide to change to a different therapist or to leave the service. And that fee covers a weekly live session over phone, video, or chat, and unlimited messaging between the sessions. So very, very simple and straightforward.
Andy, how about you? Is that almost like a fee for service in a way, or a subscriber solution?
So we try to match the customer need. And so sometimes that's a membership and sometimes that's what we call pay per question, not fee for service.
Yes, of course. There's no patient-doctor relationship here. Okay. And
Right.
then how about Alon? Do you have a mix of both, almost like a fee for service versus subscribers?
Well, we have about 5 million people who use us for free, and we have probably 1.25 million who paid us in a mix of different services. But that is, some of them use us one time, some of us use a subscription. We have a bunch of people who use us regularly one time. Bear in mind that we need to meet users wherever they are. So if they're conditioned by the healthcare system to just use it for urgent care, they're going to start there. But we're looking to build primary care relationships with the users, focus on primary. So building a relationship with the user. So we need to start with their specific intent and need, and expand it from there. Fundamentally, like, people have a broad set of needs for themselves, and again, as I mentioned, for their families. So we're looking to cater for that. But if people want to use K for free, and some people use it all day long, we're very happy with it. At the right time, there's a good chance they'll use it, but even not, we're fine. It's just giving people a menu and just making it really, really easy for them to understand. So our base price is $9 a month for acute membership. We have membership for mental health and for other chronic conditions. And then we take $19 for a single acute visit. We don't take insurance. We have different business models for the enterprise, but that's our general approach. And we're trying to also keep pricing really low and make things really, really efficient, force ourselves to automate everything that a clinician shouldn't be doing, and to lower the cost, because it's just too many people, it's too expensive for them.
So I'm going to probe you on the quadruple aim in a way, and of course the patient, the consumer is very important, and so are the providers, right? So who are giving care, how are they able to afford providing care at that price point, or how are you able to engage the providers and have more consistent panel of providers and not have a churn there with this price point?
Well, these providers work for us, so they have a relationship with us, and the users have a relationship with us through our captive friendly PC entities, that we own. In your question, you're assuming that healthcare pricing is rational, and I'm going to claim it's based on an inefficient, highly irrational, wasteful system. So, there is a loose correlation between health and healthcare. And that's the most polite way for me to describe a lot of the practices that are happening. Why do they happen that way? Because that's the way people are used to it. So yes, I'm introduced software and automation wherever necessary, and we're driving up the clinical level while lowering the price. So it's just a matter of an industry that's caught in a different era. A big chunk of what doctors do is not necessarily what people need, but they can charge for. There's a whole industry of upcoding. I know that because I've got my LinkedIn is full of 100 people reaching out to me saying, "Hey, you can upcode, you can make more money, you can charge your insurance for this or that." We've taken a different approach. So that's one thing. And you want to automate and take time out. Doctors are expensive, therapists are expensive. You want to take everything out that is unnecessary, from that process. So we do a lot of stuff on the back end to make our doctors' life much easier. I think our doctors love working on our platform because they get to focus on medicine. They get paid the same, and they don't need to worry about insurance and bills and managing all these different things. And a lot of them love the ability to help a lot of people in a productive manner. So they don't need to ask you, why are you here? My head hurts. You know, if we can collect that information, and they don't need to ask you where your pharmacy is, because we've collected that information, et cetera, et cetera. So,
yeah, Alon, your doctors aren't paid per patient, right? They're on salary, so they could stay with the patient as long as they need to.
Yeah.
To kick them out.
Bunny, you asked me when you did the podcast with me, how do you know your doctors are good? Well, we record everything. The medical chart writes itself when people are texting with their physicians. We have a really good way to audit our doctors and just train them to work on their top of their license. It's a very different approach to the existing system.
And I think Alon and Andy also provide a lot of flexibility for physicians and therapists, which is why they also attract them. Maybe talk a little bit about your model. So it sounds like K-Health salaries their physicians. Andy, how do the doctors and providers work with JustAnswer? Why is it legal?
Yeah, so they get paid on a per answer basis, and they get paid a different amount based on the quality essentially score that they fall in. And then we also have surge pricing in kind of in an Uber way that also helps make sure that customers get a fast response. So on average, the response time across JustAnswer is 3 minutes. So from the time you say go to the time you actually get a response from a doctor is 3 minutes on average. 24/7, and the doctors are thrilled with that we've got doctors that are making 10, 20, 30, 40, $50,000 a month just answering questions on our platform.
Really quickly, because we always, I mean, everybody knows, and Archana knows, being a primary care physician, they always talk about burnout, right? How do they do the additional work? Because these are doctors who also have their own clinics, right? I'm assuming.
Sometimes they do, and sometimes they don't. Some of them are doing so well on the JustAnswer platform that they focus on this. And in terms of burnout, it's a really great job. As Alon said earlier, they get to do what they do best, what they love, which is help people. And they don't have to deal with all the accounting and the back office stuff and the HR and office management and billing and all the other stuff. We take care of it. They just focus on helping people, and they can do that whenever they want, from wherever they want, right? We've got an expert that moved to Hawaii and just answers questions on the beach on their laptop. All they need is Wi-Fi, and they can help people.
Bear in mind also that if you chose a profession of a primary care physician, you're probably very mission driven, you really like it, and you haven't been focused on trying to make a lot of money in your career. Even within medicine, you can find more kind of lucrative roles. So a lot of them just enjoy that experience of interacting with patients, making a difference, putting their many years of experience to good use, and minimizing their interaction with the healthcare system in places where it's unnecessary. So
yeah. I know for Alon Matas, I was on one of the group sessions with one of your therapists who was on the beach, and there were about 200 people on that session. So I doubt she could actually do that in a clinic. And she was having a heck of a time providing therapy while she was on the beach. I don't know if you know that your therapists are on the beach, but that's where they're giving their therapy, which is totally fine. She was doing a great job. So how do you attract your therapists, and how do you pay them for their quality of care? Do they all get paid the same, or is it based on the quality they provide?
Yeah, I think taking a little bit step back, therapists are fundamentally different than, say, PCPs. And you need more of them for the same amount of clients. And the reason is a PCP is a PCP. Like if you have a medical issue that requires a PCP, almost by definition, every PCP that is decent quality should be able to help you. You don't need a special match to that PCP. Therapy is very, very different. First of all, because of people's preferences and needs. So, I need a therapist. I don't need just a therapist. I may want a female therapist who has expertise in my specific issues, say eating disorder. Maybe I prefer an older person that I can connect more to. Maybe I want a therapist of color. And even after we find the person that match all these criteria, there's still kind of the personal connection. So you may be matched to a therapist that is to check all the boxes, but still just doesn't work out, and then you will need to go to another therapist. So you need a lot more providers per person, which is why a model maybe like K-Health wouldn't work, because when you have an active network of tens of thousands of therapists, of providers, you can go with a W-2 full-time model. So all our providers are 1099s, they are contractors, and we pay them just like they used to be paid by the hours. So they don't need to worry about member subscription and what people pay. And we give a little also sliding scale and pro bono and all that. They just get paid based on the hours that they give in, whether live session like phone or video, or by messaging based on the time spent on the messaging.
And then Shawn, how about the doctors that I'm assuming you have a provider network. How do they what's the attraction to being part of a Bind provider network?
Sure. So yes, we do have a network. We actually, United Healthcare's networks are the networks that we use and underlie our products. So it's the same network. They get the payment terms they have with United or the payment terms they get with Bind. I think what they get with a Bind individual that comes to see them with Bind insurance is something that is perhaps a bit different, because over and over we hear from them that Bind people actually pull out their phones in the exam room and do searches and then ask questions about the things we provide information back on. Whether it's as simple as, where do you want to fill the script? Well, they pull out a phone and search and say, well, if I turn right to go when I'm going home, I can pay $15 to fill it. If I turn to the left, I can pay $5. That's a decision we help them make. And that's a decision that we know is often a decision you have to make in the exam room in the moment. That would be a simple decision. And on the other end of the spectrum, when someone tells you, hey, in my professional opinion, we need to do X procedure next. Well, someone can search and say, I'm dealing with this underlying issue. Procedure, yes, is an option, but just like Amazon says, people like you have tried physical therapy. Well, then guess what they asked the doctor? Hey, you never talked to me about physical therapy. What about that? So they are, when a Bind person is in front of them, they're working with them, they're, I think, unexpectedly getting a different type of conversation to happen, which is something America really needs, which is if people just ask their doctors a couple of simple questions every time, we'd be in a much better spot. Simple as, what if I don't do anything? Is there any harm in doing what you said? Are there any alternatives to what you suggested? If people just ask those three questions, we would be in a whole different spot. And we are oriented to try to help people have the confidence with a simple search tool to engage and ask those simple questions. And I would say that the clinicians are not used to that, but I do think that it is actually, they are in it to help people. And so they want to help people. So I think they actually find it quite beneficial.
Yeah, it sounds like you're really arming them with a lot of information, a lot of questions they probably would not have thought to ask.
One other question, Shawn, would you ever look into having your own medical group, very similar to Optum Cares or Minute Clinics and other CVS clinics and things like that, that could improve that upstream cost in a way, or catch people upstream?
So I think Alon B put it best when he talked about as an entrepreneurial endeavor, you have to be very diligent and you have gut-wrenching moments about how you deploy capital. Mm-hmm. And the where you want to deploy capital always exceeds by a multiple of several factors what you can actually deploy. So I wouldn't say never, but it's not something on the short-term capital deployment perspective. I think we're very aware of the fact of where health insurance sits on the trust meter of the average American. And it's not very high. I think we all know that.
Yeah.
So we have to be very, very careful about what we attempt to do for people. And right now we're trying to slowly build trust back. And any overreach sets us back to the beginning. We can't afford that as you're deploying limited capital. So we try to be very focused on jobs that we think people actually want us to do for them now, which is, they really are pretty simple. Tell me a clear answer on whether something's covered. Okay, now I've got that. Tell me what my options are in coverage, and tell me what my prices are for those various options. We try to stay focused on those things. And until we get that right, and then we might move into other things like delivering care. But that's something that's not on the short-term roadmap.
Thank you.
I want to mention that if anybody wants to ask a question, they can go ahead and put it in the chat or the Q&A. I want to switch gears a little bit. This is still around utilization, but I want to talk about millennials. And I know I've brought this up in the past, and I think one of the VCs said, oh, millennials, they're the same as Gen X's. They use the services the same, but I don't really think so. And I think I sent this out to everyone. So the millennials, they are now between 25 and 40 years old. They prefer convenience, fast service, retail clinics, virtual care. I think many of us, even who are Gen X, would prefer virtual care now. But one study does show they're very different than Gen X, and they don't do annual checkups. I think one study showed they did like one every 4 years, and they don't have more than half of them don't have primary care providers. Here we are talking so much about a new generation that could, or healthcare that's much more recurring, more preventative, and yet we have millennials who don't like checkups and do not have primary care providers. So I'm wondering, on your platforms, or even Shawn with your members, how are millennials changing the way they consume healthcare given these new models? Are you seeing any difference between a millennial and a Gen Y and a Generation X?
Sure. So I will just start by saying that going back to the selection. So oftentimes you have bind as an option and pick another plan as an option at your employer. And most people say, well, you're this digital native solution. You provide answers on a phone. I would think you're like you scream young people want to sign up. Mm-hmm. The difference is what you just said, which is they've never experienced healthcare, so they don't really know how bad it is. So they don't really recognize the need for something like us. So it's actually counterintuitive to think that a plan like ours would attract so many millennials. It's just, we actually attract people that have interacted with healthcare and are looking for something better. And frankly, a lot of people that are young have never experienced it, so they don't know they need something better. Having said that, when we look across populations, one thing that we are quite proud of in terms of delivering a better benefit to people is when we look at the utilization of preventive services, and then we look at the percentage of population at a given employer client that do not consume any services, preventive or not. And what we see is across ages, we see that we are increasing the use of preventive care. So the percent of people utilizing preventive care is going up. And then we're also seeing the percentage of people that don't access any care, have no claims event, is going down. So it goes back to the first thing I said, which is when you throw away barriers, people actually consume. And when you give them information to help them consume, they consume. And so it's across the spectrum of ages. When you do that and you make, when you make something easy to understand and easy to use, people will use it. And that's what we want, because if people get what they need over time, that benefits all of us that are in this together with them. Everyone gets better.
Maybe I should even cast this question a little bit differently. If the consumers aren't really, you don't see a difference, because, and this is for everybody, because millennials aren't even consuming because they don't think they're sick at all. We've all been through that, unless some of you are millennials. I'm definitely not a millennial. But when I was in that age group, I definitely didn't I didn't really care much about I ignored my health care, my health. But so what are you learning about, I guess, millennials? There's got to be some, millennials who engage with your platforms. And when in the future, when they engage even more, what are you learning about their usage, their desires, and how are you, how are maybe you are adapting your service to accommodate that sort of growing population of different users? And again, this is to everybody.
I think it's not just with the frequency of usage and with physical health, you can just say millennials use less because they're sick less, and that's kind of obvious. But I think when we refocus on mental health, millennials take mental health in a whole different way than previous generations. Because if a boomer has a rash, he goes to a doctor. If a millennial has the rash, go to a doctor too. Whereas in mental health, millennials take it much more seriously and don't try to just walk it off and it's probably my fault and everything will be okay. They understand that it is a real problem with real solutions, and solutions that are a lot of times with a professional in therapy services. So in that sense, we do see different approach to mental health from different generations. And as people get younger, they actually use mental health services more, and not because they're more depressed or more anxious than previous generations. I don't think that's the point. Just look at it as a problem that is like Alon said, it's part of health and not just part of life that they need to suck it up.
I think actually, Alon, millennials probably need more mental health care and services when they're younger, and then when they're older, they need more physical services. And by the way, I thought when you said that if a millennial gets a rash, they call their therapist.
No, yes, well, sometimes, but it is one of the because mental health is elective in the way, unfortunately, in the way that some people will use it, some people will not, although they need to use it. Then there's a lot more of cultural and generational differences on usage and utilization, and that goes not just to age, but for example, location. So you'll see differences in approaches between different countries. And we do have an international business, but it's definitely very skewed to countries where mental health and therapy is a thing, whereas in some countries it's just close to non-existent. So mental health is different from physical health in the sense that you can choose not to consume it, and your choice to consume it is a lot of time, many times depends on your cultural context in where you are.
Yeah, and I think you're right. What happens is how a kid is raised, and whether they're millennials or Gen Y, how the parents treated physical health and how they treated their mental health and how they addressed it is deep rooted in people. And so when they do grow older, they tend to address physical and mental health almost similarly what they did as a kid, and then they have to almost kind of break away. We do see this stigma around mental health that comes culturally inherited from people with different cultures, and then we almost need to pitch for mental health. I have to pitch for mental health for my patients, saying that, well, there are only two kinds of people, one who are in therapy, one who need to be. So let's just kind of get on with the program. I mean, not so much therapy, but like at least having some kind of coach or experience with that or access to that, so that when you do need, that you know where to go.
But I do think that there's one thing that really fundamentally changed over the last year and actually made the generations closer, because there was a lot about being tech savvy and open to technology prior to that. So millennials and Gen Y, they use technology much more comfortably and were comfortable in using virtual. And because of COVID, because everybody, doesn't matter if you're a millennial or you're a boomer, had to use technology and had to use Zoom, and they had no choice. This actually closed some of the gaps. So we don't see that difference anymore in the approach to technology and approach to use doing things virtually. So now we're kind of a more level field.
I totally agree. I think the method of consuming healthcare has definitely converged. I wish, hopefully, the acceptance of mental health as a real thing would happen. And I also feel like the annual checkups is another one of these inefficient things that Alon B was talking about. So we consider annual checkups as something that when you're well, you go and get some labs done and check off some boxes. So somehow you meet the HEDIS criteria. But that's not the annual checkup for a patient. Like annual checkup is like bring your bucket and like throw it in front of a patient, your doctor, and like go over all of the problems that you've had all this year and that you've been ignoring. That should be the annual checkup. So it's like the whole perspective of annual checkup is very, very different from billing perspective to the patient perspective. And all of those disconnects need to be tied up if people really want to embrace primary care in the way it should be. So we do see generational difference in that.
Yeah, look, I think the bigger opportunity, I think I agree with Alon Matas that things are changing quite fast, and part COVID is pushing here, and you're going to see continued acceptance for therapy. The question is also, how do you integrate these different things? The therapists and doctors don't talk, not really, not beyond the slogan. So they need to use the same data platform. It's the same user, different maybe symptoms, maybe they're related, maybe they're unrelated, but we know there's a high correlation between having a chronic condition and having depression, certain types of chronic conditions. And of course, being sick or having a certain chronic condition is scary, and it's going to increase anxiety and cause stress. So we need to connect the dots here. Everybody knows that these things should connect. They just, again, it's back to that original point. This is built very differently for a different era, for a different need, based on different assumptions about people. And so it's therapy, it's nutrition, it's genetics, it's biome. All these things need to be integrated. Now, it's easier said than done. It's not, okay, let me put the therapist next to the primary, the PCP, and they're going to talk to each other. You need to be very thoughtful about how to build it, and that takes time. To Shawn's point, it takes a lot of time to build this, and this is complicated. And you do need to think about the business model in a way that is congruent with what you're trying to offer people. But I think the next 5 years, you'll see true integration. Not, okay, I'm going to send somebody over to therapy, and maybe the therapist will send somebody over for getting medication. I think you're going to see thoughtful approaches to how to have these things integrated. And it's also within primary care, but certainly between primary care therapy and tying to nutrition and lifestyle. All these things we know they're connected. There's ample evidence. We don't really have the model for that yet.
So
quickly, well, Andy, just touching on that point, because Andy, you do have nutritionists, you have, as you said, you have oncologists, you have all different types of specialists. So do you do any collaboration, getting information from the consumer and or member, and do you help them navigate?
We do, absolutely. And that's one of the beauties of our services. It's not just within healthcare and mental health, it's even legal issues and accounting issues and anything else. So for example, I use the pregnancy example earlier in the conversation. Right? Pregnancy is not 9 months of questions. It's 9 months plus, for any of those of you out there that are parents, 18 more years of questions. And it's not just healthcare and mental health questions along the way. You've got to have a will, and you've got to have your car ready and your house child-proofed and all these kinds of things. And so we're able to look at the entire picture and solve the customer's entire problem, not just one piece of the problem, because of the different categories that we're in.
So question for you, Andy, to begin with, and then for everyone, because you're breaking through into this market that is quite set in its ways. So how are you reaching your customers? Like, what is your channel, how you're, increasing traction for a solution like yours? And then we could go around to see like what channels are you educating your customers and acquiring your customers?
So we're primarily digital, online. That's anything from the search engines, as well as display ads, as well as organic, as well as online word of mouth. These are the areas where we're primarily focused, although we also are getting some good publicity lately, and so starting to get some offline press as well, but primarily digital for us.
And how about you, Alon M, and then we could go to Alon B, and then Shawn.
So we're active in any consumer channel you can think of, whether it's like Andy, if it's search or ads or social, podcasts, TV, billboards, radio, print, any channel that gets a consumer attention. I think one of the good things from marketing perspective about mental health is that it's kind of a very, very widespread problem. So it's not, if you go after an acute situation, then you need the person that you're targeting now to have this issue at this very moment, which may work with channels that are intent-based, like search engines, for example, but just blast it on TV, the chances are pretty low that they need it right now. So they may remember it, but by the time they actually need it, they don't remember it anymore. So for us, it's really a very wide net of any channel out there. And also a lot of, it's not a viral product. Therapy is definitely not that kind of product, but definitely after so many people who have used this, there are a lot of people who recommend this to their friends and family.
What's the most cost effective? I would love to hear that too, for marketing, and what's the channel where you acquire your customers?
For us, it's like we're targeting this in a way that they all are being used to their same effectiveness level. So almost by design, they're all as effective, but in channels where we have more success, we'll invest more. Some channels are capped. So if you look at intent-based channels, search, so there are X amount of people searching every day for help with depression or therapy or online therapy. So this is a cap. But in the broadcast channels, like you can advertise on radio all day, and if it works, you just need to scale it smartly.
Great. And Allon B, how are you reaching out with this new concept of PCP, and then what is the most effective way you have captured your audience?
It's a big, ongoing, evolving thing. I mean, we have teams working on it, but look, we have a fair amount of organic users, because if I can give you access to information that can, make a big difference in your life, either in terms of cost or just in terms of health. We've had many users that have told us that we've saved their life by helping them make better decisions, or giving them access to doctors right now. It's something you'll remember and tell your friends. So we've got a nice organic component that's going nicely. And I agree that health and healthcare is less, say, viral than, say, a TikTok or Instagram, but I'm going to argue it's more meaningful. So that value kind of balances out the frequency, the lower frequency, compared to using it 10 times a day. So if you had a great experience, you're going to tell other people in a surprising number of cases, especially if you're also saving money in that great experience. But look, there's a whole world of blocking and tackling out there. So it's across the board. Alon Matas mentioned, a bunch of things. We're still young and learning these things.
Especially in the space that you're in, there's a lot of activity from Rural Health or HIMSS and other folks, or Cure.ai. They're wanting to get into this market. Do you feel, how do you stand out in that space for the consumers?
Well, it's a very different proposition. I think you're mentioning companies that have a doctor and have some kind of protocol, just a very different experience. They're good guys. I'm just, we're not focused on hair loss and vitamin and testosterone. We're focused on, primary care and, acute and chronic and, mental health. So very different focus.
Okay.
I tend to think that over the years, I've built 2 companies that are public on NASDAQ. I always get asked about competition. Competition has never been my gating factor. In fact, it often educates the market. It's usually my ability to ship great products and make them work and make our users happy. These markets are so big. My competition is inertia of somebody who has a bad, expensive experience, clunky, no access to primary care or doctors in general, and still goes back to that experience because they don't know better, because they're stuck in inertia, because they haven't heard about us, or they don't trust us yet because we knew, et cetera, et cetera. So my competition is really inertia. It's always been that ability to not only have a great product, but to figure out a way for people to hear about us. And then these markets are so big. People wave the $2.5 trillion, but just diabetes is bigger than most industries in America. It's about just diabetes in America is what, 6 times bigger than video games. So putting things in perspective, you can be incredibly successful and help a lot of people and still be a very small player in the market.
Excellent, thank you. And Shawn, how about you? How are you reaching your customers? And they are 2 different kinds in a way.
Yes, so we do today sell to enterprises, and when you look at who funds healthcare in America, it's the government and private business. So if you're selling health insurance, you either go to the government or you go to private enterprise. So we sell to private enterprise. When you sell to private enterprise, it's a 3-part sale. They hire advisors, so that's sale 1. You have to educate and help their advisors understand that there is a better option. Then they bring this forward to their client base, and you have a chance to then try to do that sale too with the person running, I'm in charge of human resources at the enterprise. And then when you're fortunate enough to have them overcome the inertia that's pulling them every day. So you say inertia, I say change is hard. So Alon B, I couldn't agree more that the #1 competition, I say it every day. I'm not concerned about XYZ company. I'm concerned about change is hard or inertia. So couldn't agree more on that. So you get through that inertia, change is hard problem with the HR leads, then you get it in front of their people. And then it becomes a matter of really, and I mentioned the stat, we know that once we go in, we will grow significantly over time, because when you offer better things to people, they talk about it. So going back to this concept of millennials, et cetera, we have a specialized retailer, a national retailer. We've all been there and bought something from them. We're at the renewal meeting with them to talk to them about how we performed and then what are we going to do moving forward. And the #1 item they said was, whatever you do, do not let Carly leave Bind. So Carly is a licensed clinician, clinical specialist, and she's part of a program we deployed very early on, recognizing there's a challenge when it comes to behavioral health. Access is a challenge. So we're going to help in 2 ways. First, we're going to connect with someone that can offer it virtually and make the barrier to that 0. So let's get virtual care going and get access to behavioral health that way. In 2020, 59% of our virtual visits were for behavioral health. So we were ahead of that. It works. So we help access. The other thing we do, and going back to this simple condition 2, entering a search box and getting options, at Bind, they enter terms, I enter anxiety, we show them, you can get virtual care right now, don't leave the comfort of your home, $0. You can go to you can go into a brick and mortar clinician for 25, 15, depending on the plan design. And then we also pop for them this, the Amazon people like you have tried this, we pop for them Carly, essentially the service Carly provides, which is, I can be your helpful advocate here. Because most often what we find is that people don't know where to start. Where do I start? So Carly helps people know where to start when it comes with the behavioral issue they're dealing with. She can also help them with things after you get started. And the clinician you've seen is unsure how to bill for this because they've run into so many barriers to getting paid in the past because of prior auth this, prior auth that. Well, Carly can help with that as well. When you do that well for people, they have a good experience, they tell other people about it. So lo and behold, this retailer, a bunch of millennials on shop floors selling people things, word gets back to headquarters that this Carly person is amazing when it comes to my behavioral health needs. Do not, she's amazing. That's rare to find as a health plan. And that literally is the first thing they said to us in the renewal meeting after our first 6 months of performance. Number one, don't let Carly go. And she's helping people with behavioral health needs. So I said a lot, but that it is a 3-part sale in the enterprise. And to win at the end of the day, consumers, it is virality and word of mouth.
Yeah.
And if you have something good, I said 86% of people would be disappointed if buying left their life. You're going to grow. When you solve things and make it better for people, in the end, people win and the people that serve them win.
That's fantastic. And that was a really good story to share with us. And Bambi, with that, I think we are getting close to time now.
Yeah, we're wrapping it up, and I just want to add something on that advertising and the marketing. I think, I guess out of the three direct to consumers, I think Alon, BetterHelp has done probably the most in advertising, but I think it's served you well. I think it's actually, I see BetterHelp everywhere, and not because you're also part of this event, but I see you everywhere. And I think to the point of what Shawn said, that it's if you're not offering a good product, they won't come back. So I think that you're spending your dollars well on advertising like crazy, but clearly you're offering a good product. So anyway, I wanted to just share that. I think this is called consumerization of mental health and consumerization of healthcare in general. So I guess the final question we can really ask is, as we roll the tape forward and think about how consumers are consuming more empowered in 5 years, maybe everybody take out their crystal ball and talk a little bit about how things change for the better. So Allon, Bloch, let me go with you, if you can think that far out.
I think changes are going to be, I don't know how fast that'll happen, that people will underestimate how deep it will go. I think changes are going to be deep, and I think we're in the beginning of this. It's going to take a little bit longer, a bit less than what people think, and it's going to be dramatic. I think in 5 years or 7 years, there will be a point of saying, hey, you remember the olden days where I needed to see a doctor and I would try and kind of beg in to try and come in and see my doctor because I had the flu and I wanted to come in. That'll go away. I think it's going to be instant for most things. And I think the other big thing is there will be true primary care, not slogan primary care, not that we're an integrated system and we're personalized medicine slogan on the entrance of the clinic or the hospital. But I think companies are going to take big steps. It does happen in Mayo Clinic, in Cleveland Clinic. It does happen in tertiary care in certain academic settings, but it doesn't happen in primary care. It doesn't happen remote, it doesn't happen outpatient. And I think much more sophisticated systems take a broader look at people will start to take hold. It's not going to necessarily make it much more expensive. I think it's in many respects will make it cheaper because again, it's going to focus on what matters, not on how you can charge money. And the last thing to this, I think, and I think various people mentioned this, there will be a change in business models. I think there will be change in business models that are tied to true value. And yes, people will try and game the system. But you can see Medicare Advantage is already a big change in the business model. I think the shift away from per member per month to true usage and true value, and try to understand that, I think, and that will happen both online and, in offline when people need to see, procedures and specialists and, all these different things. So my bet is things will go very far, much further than what people think. Right now, again, the biggest complaint that people have is I need access, or it's too expensive, or it's too clunky, or it's too far out, or it's not really good. And we have all of the above right now. But I think there will be better quality, because a lot of the quality hasn't changed in 50, 60, 70 years. We don't use the phone from 1960. We don't even use a BlackBerry. So, we're going to be using medicine and health very, very differently, I think.
Yeah, it also reminded what happened with retail. I think we're at the same point like retail in the early 2000s. And it wasn't like what's the default? Like people still buy stuff not online, but it's usually not the default. Like if they need something right now, if it gets stuck or something like that. But if they on the regular day, they go to the Amazons of the world, and I think that's the same thing is going to happen with health. Like if there isn't really a reason to go and see a doctor, and sometimes there is a reason, but if there's no reason, the default would be just doing online, and it will be supernatural.
Yeah, I'm wondering if
and continuing on that, I mean, Amazon has dominated retail because they're better, they're cheaper, they're more accessible. They're not faster, right? It still takes 2 days roughly if you have Prime. Whereas in this mental health and medicine in general, that can be faster too. So I think a lot of the players on this call are better, cheaper, faster, and more accessible. So you're able to hit not just 3, but all 4 of those key value props that customers care about. And we're able to do that using technology and automation, and automating all the stuff that doesn't matter, so that the real live human expert, doctor, mental health expert, can actually do what they do best and not all the other stuff. And just what we're trying to do, and we've talked about this a little bit, is be the Amazon of professional services. And so we see this across all of our industries, not just in mental health and in healthcare, and it's happening.
And then I would add the vector of empowerment, because despite the big words in Latin, I think we can understand most things. Yes, you might need medical advice, it might be scary, but empowering people is going to lead to a lot of consequences here, good consequences in terms of our desire. I bet you half of us are wearing wearables right now, and we're checking different things. None of it is paid by the healthcare system, and it doesn't go to any doctor. But people want to be empowered.
Yeah, I think building on that, I think the one thing I would add to the 5-year trend, the 10-year trend, is, well, Bambi, I think you started with an observation around the 50%. I mean, at the end of the day, America, at least, is a fairly individualized, individual-centric society. And people trying to sell us have recognized that and have evolved their contextual nature by which they offer us things. And I think that demand is growing in healthcare as well. And I don't think it's something that can be stopped at this point, whether you're a health insurance company, whether you're delivering healthcare services, whether you're delivering a therapeutic. People expect contextual answers. They expect contextual service. They expect contextual products to their individual situation. And I think that individual nature that is America, that's not changing anytime soon. You brought plenty of facts in your opening that's not changing. And it's only picking up steam as more and more new entrants figure out how to contextualize other parts of the economy. And healthcare is not going to be immune to this.
Do you think you take out the baby boomers, you take out the baby boomers, you take out the elderly, the growing population, because they're significant cost. Maybe they're even 80% because of their chronic conditions. But if you take them out, do you think the way we're approaching healthcare now, with the different business models, with the cheaper, with the more access, do you think we're creating a healthier society, and we'll see that in the actual numbers?
I guess
maybe that's too abstract of a question.
I don't think it's abstract at all. I think the one thing, and everyone's mentioned it here, which is the medical industrial complex was not built around the health of the individual person. right? It was built to deliver treatments because that's what you get paid for. So there are certainly companies that are emerging that have built business models that return people to health, and they don't do it through office visits, surgeries. They do it through things like meditation, diet, lifestyle adjustments, you know, to get someone to, you know, I have a colleague that, that after 30 years went off of insulin and lost 150 pounds. He never saw a doctor to do that. So that stuff is here, and I don't think there's any going back. I mean, who wants to poke themselves? I'd rather eat mayonnaise on cheese on a cracker, right, than poke myself. And that's here. I mean, we've evolved technically and scientifically enough to know there's a different way to get people to return to health. It doesn't require the medical industrial complex of 1950.
Well, I agree, and I think Archana and I agree. That's why we wanted to have this. This panel and invite you all, because you're all moving the ball in the way we think the world needs to go, which is consumers need to be more empowered, consumers need to be more preventative. The model is just, as Alon Bloch said, centuries old. Really, these companies are centuries old. If you look at the top 10 healthcare companies, they're 50 years old. Pharmacy, Merck is born in 1600. We need to change the system. So we're behind you for sure, 100%. So with that, we're going to wrap this up. This is going to be on a podcast and on video. So let me say goodbye to everyone. Shawn Wagoner from Minneapolis at Bind, Alon Matas heading to Israel, Andy Kurtzig on vacation from JustAnswer, Alon Bloch from K Health, and Archana, my partner in crime. And I'm Bambi Francisco Roizen. You've been listening to the future of the consumerization of mental health. We hope everyone will join us for our next event in November. It is going to be live at UCSF, and it is going to be on the primary care doctor.
Yes, I'm very excited about this event, and thank you so much everyone for joining in and innovating the way you are. Thank you.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you.
Thanks, Bambi. Thanks, Archana. Have a great flight, Alon.
Yeah.